So in the last step, we made our pattern and we made it on cardboard. You can make it on newspaper, but if you make it on cardboard, it's sturdy, and every time you need to make another pair, it's ready to go, and this is gonna last a long time. I did go ahead and put my name and the year, just so I know, especially if you're making this for a smaller child whose foot's gonna be bigger, you can remember whose it is and what year you made it to reference back to. Now the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna put our pattern on the leather and cut out 2 of these for both of our moccasins. So what we're gonna need for this is a pair of scissors. Now in the last step I told you I use a different pair of scissors. So this pair is the one I use on the cardboard, so it's probably a little bit dull. So we're gonna set these to the side. And these pair that I'm gonna use now is the pair that I only use on leather. I know that my blades are really sharp and it's gonna cut through this leather really easily. And the other things I'm gonna need for this step are a pencil. Now, we do not wanna use the Sharpie that we use in our first step on the leather, because Sharpie is not gonna come off of the leather. So we're gonna set that to the side, and we're gonna use a pencil because the pencil will come off of the leather. So we are going to unfold our piece of leather or whatever other material you decide to use. Now this leather I got from crazycrow.com. It is a German tanned leather and it's the natural one. You can buy this in different sizes, and as you guys are gonna see, this is a very large piece of leather, okay? So you guys can tell when we lay this out just how big this piece of leather is, okay? So the German tan leather that I use is the same on both sides, so you don't have to worry about an inside or an outside. And we are gonna lay this hide out completely, and we are gonna check for spots. Now, whenever we buy a new piece of hide, we don't wanna just take our pattern and plant it right in the center. Because if we cut out a moccasin from here, we're gonna have all this waste that we can't use. So what we're going to do is we're gonna start at the edge of our leather. We're gonna lay it out flat, and we're gonna look for a piece that we can use. We're gonna check to make sure there's not any holes. So these are just marks, they're not holes. Looks good on both sides. So I am going to place my pattern down, and I want to put it as close to the edge as I can get. So now you can see there's a big difference in the waist that we have. So we're gonna take our pencil and we are just gonna trace around the edges of this. So I will see you in just a second to show you how to cut out the second one. So now that we have our first one cut out, it's probably a little faint for you guys to see, but I can see it. And so we are going to pull more of our leather out, and we're gonna find another place to fit our other moccasin. Now, there's gonna be places on the hide, like right here. Obviously you want to avoid holes, but you have to be careful of these little holes too. You don't want this hole to be anywhere on your moccasin. So while this is a great corner piece for me to fit my moccasin in, there's a couple holes here that I want to avoid. So I'm going to be mindful of those 2 spaces. I'm going to lay my pattern down. Make sure that it doesn't overlap our line over here. Make sure it's not running off the edge. And we don't have any holes underneath, so we're gonna trace a second one. now that we are done with our pattern, we can set this to the side. Now remember, don't throw this away because you'll have a perfect pattern for the next time you need to make moccasins. So the next step we're gonna do is we are gonna grab our leather scissors and we are going to cut along these lines on both of the moccasins that we just drew out. Now we have two pieces of leather that we've cut out from our pattern, one for our right foot, one for our left foot. And the last thing that we need to do during this step to get ready to sew up our moccasin is to make the piece of leather string that we're going to use to sew. So I'm going to set my moccasins to the side. I'm going to get my leather out. Now you can see right here, this is where I cut one of my moccasins out. This is where we went around the toe. I found that if I cut a string from right here, from this point to this point, it'll be long enough if I cut two to sew up both moccasins. So what we're gonna do, we are going to take our scissors and we are gonna cut a piece of leather that's a little bit smaller than 1/4 of an inch and a little bit bigger than 1/8 of an inch. You wanna really get in there, cut it thin, and like I said, you're gonna cut two of these. So cut two of these out and then I'll show you the next step. Now that we have two, we're gonna set our leather to the side. As you can see, we still have a ton left. You get lots of pairs of moccasins out of one hide. And we have our two strings that we just cut. Now, what we need to do is we need to make sure that there's no weak spots. So, if we lay this guy out, you can see how long he is. We're gonna grab each end and we're gonna pull, okay? Now, you don't wanna prove that you're the strongest person in the world, but you do wanna put some tension on it, because if there's a weak spot anywhere in the leather, pulling on it is gonna make it snap. And you wanna test your string out because you'd rather it snapped here and cut another one than to snap while you're sewing your moccasin and then have to take that piece out and start all over. Now, as you can see, after we've stretched out, it's gotten thinner and it's also longer. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our scissors and we're going to make a point. Now we wanna make a long point, okay? We don't just wanna cut it like that and have that little sharp point. We want it to be very long and thin, okay? Now you can see that's a long point that comes out. And this is what we're gonna thread through our leather, okay? And then on the opposite end of that, you wanna tie this into a single knot and pull the knot all the way down to the end. Now you will have a lot of little flyaways that come off your leather, that's fine. But now we have a string that's ready to go. So you're gonna do the same thing to this one, stretch it out, check for weak spots, put a point in one end, a knot in the other. We have completed the step where we cut out our moccasins, we cut out the string to sew them up with, and we are ready to move on to actually putting together our moccasins.